Joining us now is Donald Trump's campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway. Congratulations, my friend. It's good for you to be with us this morning, and I immediately am going to pick you for information. Tell us about the calls that you got from Hillary Clinton and from President Obama, and the call to you from Huma Abedin. Tell us about all these experiences.
Okay, well, thank you, Chris. It's a great day for us here in Trump Tower. So we were already headed over to the Hilton to do what we had been doing all night long, which is watch the returns, wait for all the states to be called, and eventually the next president-elect of the United States to be announced. And as we were preparing to do that backstage, my phone rang. It said Huma Abedin. I was happy to talk to it. I had a nice exchange with Huma, who I respect very much. And she said Secretary Clinton would like to talk to Mr. Trump. So I handed him the phone, and they had maybe a 1-minute conversation, very gracious, very warm. I heard Mr. Trump's side of it. He commended her for being smart and tough and running a very hard-fought campaign. And I'm told Secretary Clinton congratulated Donald Trump on his victory and conceded to him.
Kellyanne, tell us about your night before that. What was the moment where jaws were dropping? Was it after Donald Trump won North Carolina? Was it Florida? What was the moment where you realized things were really breaking your way?
So it's been feeling this way for a couple of weeks now, and I think last night, empirically, it's when these silly exit polls faded out of view, and when the actual election results started to be announced, because those really reflect what people did. And I think when we saw we were able to protect our core four, as I've been calling it, Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, and Iowa, then we knew we were onto something, because we had a lot of people in our counties giving us information about returns. We were able to compare Mitt Romney's returns to last night's, what we were hearing. And we knew we went into yesterday. We knew we went into Election Day behind in the early vote. This is not unusual for Republicans. But in a place like Florida, we had cut the early vote deficit that Governor Romney had against President Obama in half. In North Carolina, we were happy with our early vote, even though we were losing it. We were happy with where it was relative to Governor Romney's in 2012. And so we knew if we had strong day of turnout, we could protect those core four. Then it was a matter of flipping a blue state or two. And this is something that we've had in our sights for months, really taking the case right to Pennsylvania. It's just always felt right for Donald Trump. Donald Trump, Mike Pence have spent a lot of time with the Trump family. Melania Trump was there last week. So it's a state where we felt the Trump message would do very well. We also felt that Hillary Clinton promising to put coal miners out of work or steel workers, that wasn't going to go well in a place like Pennsylvania. Michigan, Wisconsin, the same thing. So it just all started to come together. So
I loved your tweet last night that stop saying all the pollsters didn't see it, because obviously Kellyanne is a pollster and she obviously saw it. New Hampshire, Michigan, and Minnesota still too tight to call. Won't change the race from Clinton's perspective, but would deliver a hefty mandate to Donald Trump if each breaks his way. How important are they?
Well, they're important, and there are places where we were in the waning days, sometimes under a hail of criticism, Chris. Why are you going to Minnesota? Well, maybe we saw that Minnesota was tight. Internally, we saw Minnesota was -3 for us, and thought, let's go there. Because if you work for Donald Trump, it's never a choice between this state and that state. It's just a matter of adding more stops to the calendar, since he's so willing to be campaigning practically 24/7. It's the complete mystery to all of us, president or no president, when this man sleeps. We still don't know. So if he's willing to do 6 stops a day, if Governor Pence is willing to do 5 or 6 stops a day, it's easy to add when you see something blossoming in the internal polling. The other thing is, we saw, and I've talked about it on CNN, again, criticized for doing so, but we saw 2 things that ended up being true. One is the undercover Trump voter, these people who want to take the country in a new and different direction, have an unfavorable opinion of Hillary Clinton, but don't look the part of a Republican presidential voter. Maybe they voted for President Obama twice. Maybe they voted for President Bill Clinton twice. Maybe they vote for Democrats in the off year. But it's the combination of the message and the messenger this year, and their reluctance to go for more of the same and go for Hillary Clinton, that really made them available to us. The second thing that we saw was that Hillary Clinton just had a very difficult, and it turns out impossible, time to bust through her ceiling of 45, 46, 48% in some of these states that President Obama carried twice with more than 50%. So seeing her, that deficit for her, gave us an opportunity to at least try to get to parity with her. We ended up putting Mr. Trump and Governor Pence and our ad money in those states where we saw that happening.
So, Kellyanne, let's talk about Secretary Clinton, and let's talk about some of Donald Trump's campaign promises. One of them was to appoint a special prosecutor to investigate Hillary Clinton. Is that going to happen?
We didn't discuss that last night, and he did not discuss that with Hillary Clinton on the phone.
But I mean, for voters who want to know whether or not there'll still be division or whether there'll be unity, that was one that was a real rallying cry for some of his supporters and a battle cry for him. And I think that this morning, Democrats obviously are waking up somewhat despondent, and they want to know what to expect. Do you expect that those sorts of investigations from Donald Trump will continue?
Well, on your point of we need unity, that was precisely the theme of Trump's victory speech last night, Allison.
True.
He went way out to make sure everybody heard him loudly and clearly that he will be the president for all Americans, and that includes many that did not vote for him and did not expect him to be their president. He also went a little bit farther. He said we need to heal and bind the wounds of a nation. Obviously, he's spoken to President Obama. Obviously, he's spoken to Secretary Clinton. They are two leaders that we would like to lean upon to help us do that. We certainly hope we can do that. And we certainly hope that a number of Democrats today feel the same way, and even the non-voters, people who don't really bother with the system. So, this is for all Americans.
Well, what do you do with the disconnect, though, Kellyanne? What do you do with, well, of course you want to conciliate. Of course you want to bring people together. That is the responsible thing for the president-elect to do, and I agree with you. He did it well. But there is such a stark contrast between the message he campaigned on, which was certainly one of division to many people's perspective, maybe more than half the country at latest count of the popular vote. How much will we hear from the president-elect clarifying what he will and will not do that matches up with what he promised during the campaign?
Well, respectfully, I disagree that he ran on division. He ran on many things. He had a lot of policy proposals that people were hearing and liking. I mean, if you look at the last couple of weeks, the divisive negative campaign belonged to Hillary Clinton. I have to tell you, as Donald Trump's campaign manager, I was mystified, really excited and heartened, but mystified as to why she would go all negative instead of maybe explaining what her answer to Obamacare might be and the Affordable Care Act. So it was a huge risk on their part, I thought, and it didn't pay off. But on Mr. Trump and what he would do, he's going to work with everyone. And you say how can you bridge the rift? I think, Chris, that we ought to realize that where we may disagree politically and ideologically, people have far more in common in this country than they may realize when they're in the heat of the political battle. And we need to come together as Americans. We need to recognize that there's essential goodness in Americans. We have a certain wisdom and discernment. And I saw that all across the country and traveling with Mr. Trump. People they love this country and they love each other and they really do want the best. And I think people just looking askance at each other because they have a different political point of view is very unfortunate. And I really hope, because I've heard a lot of it on CNN for the last year and a half, I really hope, some people will just tamp it down. Lay down the verbal firearms, tamp it down, and give this guy a chance. Give him a chance as your president-elect, like we all did with President Obama and we all did with President Bill Clinton, et cetera. Give him a chance and be there for him. Come together as a nation.
But are you saying that the divisive rhetoric was on cable news and not at some of Mr. Trump's rallies? I mean,
No, I didn't say that.
So let's be honest.
No, I didn't say that.
I mean,
I'm just
Mr.
saying,
Trump
no, I didn't say
did
that.
have some divisive language. We all have it. We have the tapes that we could re-rack. And so everybody loves the idea of moving forward and coming together as a country, of course. And what I hear you saying, unless you correct me if I'm wrong, is that he will not press ahead with any sort of investigation or prosecution of Hillary Clinton because that would not be in keeping with unity.
I have not discussed that with him, Allison, especially since he became the next president of the United States. But let me repeat that there's divisiveness all the way around. And I think just throwing at us constantly the isms and, if you can just go back and reflect for a moment on the avalanche, the unprecedented deluge of negative criticism that we've received here at the Trump campaign and has been laid upon his shoulders, it truly is unprecedented. And you know what? It backfired by and large because people ended up saying, stop telling me what's important to me. Stop telling me what to think and whom to vote for and who's disqualified. Look at what the Clinton campaign did for weeks, for months. They were trying to tell people, this is what's important to you. Temperament, or this comment that many years ago, or that comment yesterday. This is the next thing that's important to you. And meanwhile, people are saying, you know what's important to me? whatever's important to me. I honestly think, to the whole political elite media class, all of us, really all of us privileged people who have a platform, Allison and Chris, I think the big lesson of yesterday is stop listening so much to each other and start listening to the people. They have fabulous stories to tell. They're good-hearted. And I think we've got a lot more in common in this country than we don't. And you see President-elect Trump making that promise.
Well, listen, those are the right words to hear on this day. And I can assure you that this country, because you got over half the country voted for Hillary Clinton, they're all eager to hear it and to see them put into action moving forward. Let me ask you a question. You're still in the afterglow. You deserve to enjoy it. This was hard fought. The transition's going to take time. Do you see the urgency being domestic or foreign right out of the box? Because you do have these complicated military situations abroad, and you do have complicated political situations at home. But is one of them going to be a more urgent priority early on?
I think it has to be all of the above, Chris. We have a lot of problems to still tackle. Well, but look, good leaders surround themselves with people who can help them to do that. That's just always the case with our presidents. And you're right, it's difficult to know where to start because many things seem like a hot mess here and abroad. But Mr. Trump has been very clear about what his priorities are, and they do include both a domestic and a foreign agenda. But I think I would just have to say on his behalf all of the above, because as President and Commander-in-Chief, you just can't pick and choose and sequence what you're going to work on when there's so many urgencies. But we've got a lot of folks hurting in this country. And we have a lot of folks who feel like they've been left behind. They don't have a voice, feel like they're struggling to decide whether to meet those new hikes in Obamacare premiums, food or rent. And then you've got people around the globe that are very concerned about the advance of terrorism, about the changes in their country, maybe economically. And so we need a president, I think he said very clearly last night, he said, I'd like to tell the world community, I will always put America first, but I also will deal with you fairly. And in other words, we'll be a partner around the globe. And he means that. And we need a president who looks upon everything that way.
What do you expect from the meeting with President Obama on Thursday? Is there any message that Donald Trump will give to him?
I'll let those two world leaders decide that, Allison. I think that they will talk about the things they can maybe work on together in the future and how to build on what successes President Obama has and, frankly, how to tackle the infinite to-do list that he will leave behind. I mean, that has to be a priority. I mean, I would note that yesterday's election brought together Republicans in the House, the Senate, and the presidency for all the talk about how Donald Trump is going to drag down the House and Senate. I mean, good God, how many people sat on your network and said with a straight face he was going to cost the Republicans everything not nailed to the ground, and instead they won everything? That tells you something about where America wants to go, though. He's being given a mandate. And that mandate is going to be somewhat different than what we've had. It is a repudiation of some of the things we've had.